And now, right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Millennium News 24 Power Talk Show, and I'm your host, Eric Stevenson. I'm with you. Today we have a very interesting guest and some history here that probably should have been told a long time to those who don't know, but we're going to clear that up today. I have with me none other than the President General of the UNIA, the United Negro Improvement Association, Mr. Honorable Michael Duncan. Welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Stevens. It's Stevenson. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for highlighting the work of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, the greatest man that ever walked Earth. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You know, for those who is probably listeners who might have heard of Marcus Garvey, and some who might not have heard of him. And his walks and the history of him, and a great deal of it started and was accomplished right here in the state of New York, in the city of New York.
Right.
So many of the people, like I said, heard but don't know his actual work and teachings. So, and about the United Negro Improvement Association. So why don't you fill the listeners in on what it's about, the association and the organization?
Yes, brothers and sisters, again, my name is Michael Duncan, and I'm the 10th successor to the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, making me the 11th President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, founded by Mr. Marcus Messiah Garvey and our ancestors in 1914 in Kingston, Jamaica. Brothers and sisters, Marcus Garvey seen the plight of Black people, African people in Jamaica as a boy. Growing up in St. Anne's Bay in Jamaica, he saw that Black people were at the bottom. And living in the hills, he lived there for a while, and he finally decided to move down to Kingston to work as a printer assistant. And there he started getting experiences and seeing the plight of Black people. At a young age, he decided to do something about it. So he would advocate for some of the brothers and sisters who weren't able to read and write. And he did that very well. In 1910, he decided to travel, and he traveled to South and Central America, seeing what things were like there for Black people. And he went to at least 17 countries in South and Central America: Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico. He went to all those countries and he saw the plight of Black people there. He realized that in some instances, they were worse in those countries than even in Jamaica. And to him, it was very bad in Jamaica. He came back to Jamaica in 1912, and then 3 months after that, he embarked on a trip to Europe, seeing what things like were for Black people there. And Brother Stevenson, everywhere he went, he saw that Black people were at the bottom. Black people were last. Black people weren't doing good. He toured through Europe, England, toured through France, Greece, everywhere. Black people were at the bottom. He decided in 1914 to take a trip back to Jamaica. And on that trip, on that boat coming back to Jamaica, he met a couple. The brother was from the Caribbean, but his wife was from the Basuto land in Africa. And there they explained to him the plight of Black people in Africa. And Brother Stevenson, it was even worse. As he learned about the plight of Black people in Africa, he went to his bed and, brother, he cried. That night, he asked himself, he himself some prominent questions while laying on his bed. He said, "Where's the black man king and his kingdom? Where's his government? Where is man of high places?" He said, "I couldn't find them. Therefore, I'll help you make them." So traveling back again, he read a book Up from Slavery. And that book explained to him what transpired.
Who's that book by again?
By Booker T. Washington.
Booker T. Washington, yes.
Yes, and it explained to him the plight again for black people here in America. And it was just as bad. So Mr. Garvey traveled to Jamaica, and on July 20, July 20, 1914, he formed the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. We refer to it as UNIA, ACL. And there he started the movement, brother, to make a difference for black people. And Mr. Garvey got an invitation from the US because Mr. Garvey was doing the work in Jamaica. But a lot of Jamaicans were not as receptive to Mr. Garvey work. So in 1916, Mr. Garvey traveled to New York City. He was coming here to meet Booker T. Washington. But he spent roughly 3 months on the high seas. And by the time he got here, Booker T died. With Mr. Garvey coming here, he saw that the mindset of black people here were different than that of our brothers and sisters in Jamaica. And he traveled 38 states looking at possibilities. And after traveling these United States, Mr. Garvey said, no matter how things are bad here, the most affluent set of black people in the world are in the United States, Harlem. And he decided to start a branch of the UNIA here in Harlem. And brothers and sisters, all else is history. Mr. Garvey created 1,200 divisions, branches of the UNIA. At the highest point, we had over $12 million in every corner of the world you can think of. We build hotel, we build school. Where Harlem Hospital is right now was the UNIA. Where the church in Harlem, where Adam Clayton Powell was preaching, was the UNIA building.
Wow.
Yes, it was the UNIA building. Mr. Garvey building at that time, at any meeting on a Sunday afternoon in Harlem, could hold 7,000 people, and we had standing room only. Wow. Mr. Garvey, to me, brother, he's the greatest man that ever walked on earth, because what Mr. Garvey did, Brother Stevenson, was to make a government of black people. The UNIA is officially a government for those who don't know. And it was created by Mr. Garvey in 1920 when he had that big convention, and 150,000 people marched through Harlem, downtown Manhattan, and we had the convention in Madison Square Garden that lasts from August 1st until the 31st. And on the 31st, it was recorded that the UNIA is a government. And what I say, and why I say Mr. Garvey is the greatest man that ever walked on earth, brother, think about it. No other man single-handedly created a government. Remember, he created a government across national borders. People who spoke many different languages. He spoke something against the borders that borders land, the language which borders people. And to do something like that and organize 12 million members, it's almost impossible. But brother Stevenson, God himself and the ancestors were working with Mr. Garvey. I have to give credit to Mr. Garvey because as a young boy coming from Jamaica, I came here to New York City when I was 14 years old. And it was at 17 years old in high school, I picked up Mr. Garvey's book, Philosophy and Opinion. And at that point, I realized, in fact, that I was, in fact, not a Jamaican, but an African born in Jamaica. It changed my perspective on life and the things I would later do. Mr.
But we're going to take a quick break. Just hold that thought. We're going to be right back.
Okay, thank you, brother.
Yes. Hello, viewers in America and across the world. This is Eric Stevenson, host of the Power Talk show on Millennium News 24. Tune in every week at Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, American Time, and also on all of your iOS and Android devices. Also on Smart TV and Apple, Amazon, and worldwide through Verizon Satellite. And also worldwide through www.millenniumtvnews.com. And that's www.millenniumnews24.com. And through our social media, Millennium News. See you there. Welcome back to Power Talk. I'm your host, Eric Stevenson. I'm with you, and we're here with Michael Duncan, the President General of the UNIA. I don't want to get you off thought, so let's continue, brother.
Yeah, so, brother, Marcus Garvey was gifted from the ancestors. You know, if you listen to Malcolm X said it best. He said, every time we see an island in the Caribbean, every time we see a country in Africa getting its independence, we know that Marcus Garvey is alive. Martin Luther King said, special thanks and praises must be given to this prophet, Marcus Garvey, who showed us the way to salvation. Historians said what he did, where he did it, and when he did it was impossible. It shouldn't have happened until 300 years from today. However, Marcus Garvey did it. There was one lady who was in the UNIA, and she said, being a part of the Garvey movement, it made me feel like I owned half of the world. And I didn't own the next half because I didn't want it. Marcus Garvey inspired Black consciousness, inspired Black people for freedom and liberation across borders. One of Marcus Garvey's major projects was the Liberian Project. The project wherein he was going to build the biggest city in Liberia. Marcus Garvey had paid down money on 5 different plots in Liberia. And he had sent pioneers to Liberia to build that city, because by building that major city in Liberia, eventually that would have become the hub for Black people. And there we would have organized our finances, our schools, our army, and through our Pan-African army, we would have been able to chase out the colonizers and the slavers from Africa. But the world knew that. These colonizers knew that. And 400 of them got together and they asked themselves a prominent question. Are we going to allow this one man, Marcus Garvey, to destroy what we built in 300, 400 years? And they decide no. And on that account, they decided that Marcus Garvey must go. But within that process, Marcus Garvey had made a plan to lease 1 million acres in Liberia. That was to create the super city. And he promised Liberia to pay them $1 per acre. I'm sure you know about W.E. Du Bois. The U.S. government contracted W.E. Du Bois and ordered him to go to Liberia to stop the Marcus Garvey plan. And W.E. Du Bois, being a pawn working for the CIA, went to Liberia, spoke to Charles D. King in not allowing Marcus Garvey to land in Jamaica. I mean, but in
Liberia.
Liberia. And that's how you heard about the company Firestone. The tire we have right now, Firestone,
Mhm.
instead of Marcus Garvey getting the land, they forced Liberia to take the contract away from Marcus Garvey and the UNIA, and they gave it to Firestone. Firestone built the biggest rubber plantation in Liberia. Continue the enslavement of our people. But Brother Stevenson, look at the funny thing where Mr. Garvey was paying them $1 per acre.
Mhm.
Firestone paid them 6 cents per acre.
Mhm.
And they built the biggest rubber plantation. The Liberian rubber make Firestone one of the richest countries in the world. But still, right now, our brothers and our sisters there are suffering.
Slave wages.
Mr. Garvey had to go because he shook the cornerstone of three major empires at that time: the US, France, and England.
Mm.
Brother, if you have any questions, but I'll hold on if you do.
No, I want to hear this. This is very interesting. I didn't know this history because Firestone. We all know it here in America, but we didn't know about the manufacturing plant in Liberia and what you're telling us now. You know?
Yes, my dear brother. At 17, Liberia became my favorite country on earth. And I knew that because Garvey and Garveyism, I had to spend my last days in Liberia.
Mm.
I wanted to go there since I was 17, but I didn't know this place, didn't know anybody from there or whatever. But as God would have it, brother, the last president of Liberia is my brother-in-law. And we were able to work with him to put some things in place and to continue the work that Mr. Garvey started. In the super plan Mr. Garvey had for Liberia, he had a Liberty Farm planned in it because agriculture is the order of the day. So Mr. Garvey had planned to build a big farm called Liberty Farm. And it wasn't to be because of the influence of the outsiders, but the colonizers who used W.E. Du Bois to do this. But I'm proud to say, brother, in 2020, under the banner of the UNIA, we built that Liberty Farm in Liberia. Currently, it's on 50 acres. We're growing vegetables. We're growing fruits. We're raising animals. And we're in the process of processing bammies from Liberia and send them to America, where we're going to distribute our products from Liberia. The dream of Mr. Garvey is not dead because Liberty Farm is there. But we have gone further in Southeast Queens, my dear brother, and we have opened a company we call The Rock. We organized 200 of us from the UNIA and the community, and we put about $2 million together. We opened our own wholesale / retail 15,000 square feet facility here in Queens, and we're selling over to 200 Black restaurants. We have individuals who come in. We're looking to expand where we need a bigger location. And once we get our bigger location, we're going to be open smaller locations throughout the cities, throughout the states, and throughout the country, everywhere Black people live. The fact is, the dream, the planning of Mr. Garvey is never dead. Brother, for Mr. Garvey doing this work, they arrested him and they put him on trial in New York City in the 1920s. he was being tried in Manhattan. And since he couldn't get anyone to represent him the right way, he had to represent himself. And while being in court, we know what they do to our black people in court. While being there, he was getting the better of the U.S. attorney. Then the U.S. attorney stood up and said to him, and said to the jurors rather, are you going to let the tiger go? Referring to Mr. Garvey, are you going to let the tiger go? They knew they had to convict him. Brother, they convicted Mr. Garvey in prison.
And that's a time of high racism.
Yes, high racism.
We still have it today, but in 1920, it was even worse.
Big time.
Went underground and into the robes and everything now, but then was very tough.
Yes. So they convicted Mr. Garvey and put him in prison, brother. But he knew they were going to kill him. He was placed in Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Wow. While being in prison, some visitors came to see Mr. Garvey, and they asked him a question. They said, Brother Garvey, if you had it to do it all over again, would you do it any different? Mr. Garvey said, no. Mr. Garvey went on to say, when I did what I did, I knew exactly what would happen to me. However, he said, men who are in earnest are unafraid of consequences. Therefore, we as African people, we must stand up for our people. We must gear our children and make sure they're not abused. We have to cut the slavery system that is still going on today. And Mr. Garvey said, as he said, men who are in earnest are unafraid of consequences. While being in prison, Brother Stevenson, Mr. Garvey penned a letter. And he penned a letter to send it to all black people all over the world, to let them know that no matter what happened, if they kill him in Atlanta, if I have enough time, I'd like to recite that letter, my dear brother.
Do you have it with you?
No, I know it, brother.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break in 2 minutes, and we'll come and we go right to the letter. So, you know, it's unfortunate, but it's still fortunate that he had a blueprint.
Yes.
That he laid out, knowing from his wisdom and his intelligence that he knows eventually he would have to move on and transform, but the blueprint would still be left to be followed. You know, you as an 11th successor, I'm glad to see that you have it right on the cap here.
Yes.
To give it, because we have a history class today. I thought I knew about Marcus Garvey, but I'm hearing today is like much more informative, you know. Did he spend the whole time in prison, or was he released early?
They commuted his sentence. And the reason why they commuted his sentence, we had African people from the United States protesting in front of Atlanta Federal Penitentiary every day in the hundreds of thousands.
Wow.
And the president that year, his advisor told him.
Who was the president at that time?
Coolidge.
Oh, okay. Did any of the government officials support Marcus Garvey in this, or they stayed out of it?
Well, but you mean at that time?
Yes.
No, they couldn't support him because remember, J. Edgar Hoover, who was the leader of the Bureau of Investigation,
he
had the Garvey campaign must go. And then not only that, anyone who supported Mr. Garvey at that time, he would physically go after them.
Yeah. We're going to take a break and come right back. And let's get to this letter.
Sure.
Hello, viewers in America and across the world. This is Eric Stevenson, host of the Power Talk show on Millennium News 24. Tune in every week at Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, American Time, and also on all of your iOS and Android devices. Also on Smart TV and Apple, Amazon, and worldwide through Verizon Satellite. And also worldwide through www.millenniumtvnews.com. And that's www.millenniumnews24.com. And through our social media, Millennium News. See you then. Welcome back to Millennium News 24 Power Talk. I'm your host, Eric Stevenson. I'm with you over here with Mr. Michael Duncan from the UNIA. We want to continue on now with the letter, Mr. Duncan, so we could hear what was said.
Yes, brother. Mr. Garvey knew they were going to kill him, and they had planned to kill him in prison. But what stopped them is because of the activism of the UNIA members every single day in front of Atlanta's federal penitentiary.
So the fear of Marcus Garvey for this whole movement and of the wanting to kill him is because he wanted to see black people's lives improved?
Of course. That's
so our own government, American government, wants to keep black people oppressed and at bay from being upright people, having decent lives and positions of society.
Of course, brother.
So, okay, we'll continue.
Yes, so he wrote this letter, and that's just his most famous piece that he left. He wrote it while he was in the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. And the letter said, "After my enemies are satisfied, I shall come back to serve." He said, "In life I shall be the same, but in death I shall be a terror to the foes of black liberty. If death has power, count on me to be the real Marcus Garvey. If I may come in a cyclone, pestilence, or as God would have me, black people, don't you know I shall never desert you and make your enemies triumph over you? Would I not go to hell 1,000,000 times for you? Would I not cry at the footstool of the Lord omnipotent for you? Would I not walk the earth like the ghost of Macbeth for you?" He said, "Then why be sad? Cheer up and be assured that if it takes 1,000,000 years, the sins of our enemies shall visit the 1,000,000 generation of those who hinder and oppress us." Black people, if I die in Atlanta, my work then shall only begin, for I shall live in the spiritual to see the days of Africa's glory. Look for me in the whirlwind. Look for me in the storm. Look for me all around you. And when I am dead, wrap me in the mantle of the red, the black, and the green. For with God's grace and blessings, I shall rise again. I shall bring with me countless millions who have died in the Caribbean, North America, and Africa in the fight for freedom, liberty, and life. He said, one God, one aim, one destiny. Thank you, brother.
Wow. That's powerful words, brother. And I was just feeling in my own spirit the meaning of and the truth of it.
Yes, yes.
Coming from his struggle and from his convictions of his life to state that he's given like as if it's his last words.
Yes, yes.
And he said it with all his spirit and truth.
Yes, brother.
That we should know that it is exactly that.
Yes.
And we should hold it as that.
Yes.
But I wanted to definitely be a day of understanding who he was, because I guess if the government was so much against the movement of him, that they're going to be so much against the education of him.
Of course.
Because, the kids today coming out of the schools, whether it's elementary, middle, or even colleges, universities, it's not part of the curriculum. But some African study departments are daring enough to say, study Marcus Garvey, or talk about Marcus Garvey, you
Of
know,
course.
but it's not a common talk. And that's why I'm happy we able to have this discussion and be able to have access to hear from you as the successor, you know, and let people know that the UNIA is here strong and alive.
Yes,
And it's
brother.
a movement. Look, and you know, when people look at it, it's for the benefit and betterment of all society and people. Because you should want the bottom to be lifted. Because that which is on top of the bottom just goes up too.
Yes, of course.
You know, so the bottom, we should want people out of poverty. We should want production. We should want people out of crime, and we won't need prison systems. You know, police forces won't have any work to do. We have production and things to do and to move on with in a civilized society and community, just like they did in Black Wall Street. You know,
Of course, of course.
so we need to, I'm glad we able to have this discussion today. And here, Marcus Garvey, I know his birthday was which day?
On August 17th.
August 17th. Yes.
So it was last week, Saturday. We were able to celebrate it by having a parade
Yes.
through Harlem.
Yes.
And it was a wonderful day. Every year on August 17th, we have this parade. We have festivities for the whole month of August. And that's why I traveled to Chicago yesterday to go celebrate Marcus Garvey Day in Chicago.
That's great.
Flew down yesterday morning, was able to work with my brothers and sisters in Chicago, promoting Garvey and Garveyism there, because there was a strong Garvey movement there in Chicago as well. And right now it's still there. So I go from city to city where we have our local chapters. We have a chapter in Ethiopia, chapter in Kenya, in Liberia, in Ghana, in Curacao. So we have a chapter. We have chapters in Jamaica. So we are working and in chapters throughout the United States. But Brother Stevenson, if I have some more time, I'd like to say this this part of Marcus Garvey, maybe a lot of people don't recognize, but Mr. Garvey was highly spiritual. Highly spiritual in the sense that most of us will not understand it. You see, we as African people, we were given certain gifts by the ancestors and by God that the other people and the colonizers never understood. Well, they understood. That's why they try to take our spirituality from us, and they force their religion on us. But Mr. Garvey was highly spiritual. If you listen to the letter that he wrote that I just recited,
Yeah.
in the first part he said, "In life I shall be the same, but in death I shall be a terror." He's saying that in death we still have power.
Yeah.
Then he went on to say, "I will bring with me countless millions of Black people who have died in the Caribbean, North America, and Africa to aid us in the fight for freedom, liberty, and life."
And that Atlantic slave trade, the millions.
Yes,
Yeah.
brother.
Yes.
So for Mr. Garvey to be able to do what he did, God and the ancestors themselves were with Mr. Garvey. No way he did these things unless he had God with him, moving with God. So Mr. Garvey was highly spiritual, but what you have to realize that they came and they took our spirituality and gave us their religion. I'm not saying anything is wrong with their religion, but their religion is for them. The same thing for him doesn't mean the same thing must be for me.
Right.
And when I look at their God can't be my God, because I know my God would not empower them to enslave us and kill us and keep us in bondage for 400 years. My God wasn't a part of that.
Yes.
So for the slave master to come to Africa, kill my brother, kill my father, rape my mother, then brought me here in slavery, and now you're going to tell me who God is? No, you are too evil to tell me who God is. So again, as I said, Mr. Garvey was highly spiritual. W.E. Du Bois, I don't know if you know much about him, but
I know of his books, but I'm sorry. He played the role of stopping Marcus Garvey in Liberia like that. It's very disturbing to hear it, you know?
yes. And finally, how he ended up is that the United States actually kicked him out of the country. And when they kicked him out of the country, he had nowhere to go, so he had to go to Ghana to go live. And he was staying with the president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah. That's where Kwame Nkrumah instructed him on Marcus Garvey. And finally, before he died, he admitted that Mr. Garvey way was the right way.
So why did the government kick him out the country after using him like that?
The government figure he started having some communist tendencies. And they felt that he was working with communists. So they had no need.
They used him against Marcus Garvey and then abused him and kicked him out the country.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's why we have to know what we know. We have to know what we're willing to do. And as I said, we have to do what's right for our people, regardless of the consequences, because it's because of the sacrifices that our people make, like your grandfather who helped to write with Mr. Garvey. And we have to give thanks, and all these heroes that contributed, brother, we have to continue to talk about them. Mr. Garvey, your grandfather, and so many other who contributed to the movement so you and I can be free, because if it were not for the Garvey movement, maybe we would have been back in slavery.
It has to be a major revival.
Yes.
You know? It has to be, because the work is too great to let it settle.
Yes.
It has to be elevated. From what I'm hearing, especially from the letter he wrote from the prison, it just sends something through me, you know, and and the work to see that it's still throughout the country, but more growth or reminder has to be given, because it's already set over 1,200 chapters, meaning the work is worldwide.
Yes.
But the reminders have to be out, and this show today serves as a reminder to those who listen and hear about what's going on and about it. What would you say would be for those listeners who don't know about Marcus Garvey and his writings and teaching? What would you say would be a book to start to know about what he stood for and about his thought?
Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. I read that book when I was 17 years old. And Brother Stevenson,
you still read it, don't you?
Yes, it changed my life.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. Yeah, so listeners should definitely get a hold of it. I read it and reread it, and probably would never stop to read it, because it's like every time you read it again, it's like, how'd you miss this? Or you get a deep understanding. So, you know, they always say if you want to read a book, read it 7 times. But this is something you have to read throughout your life as a blueprint, roadmap for your own improvement of your own life and your society.
Yes. I ask you one favor. In the UNIA, when we refer to the prince that Mr. Garvey left for us, we refer to them as the Black Prince.
Good one.
Yes.
Right. Yes. let's take the American version off of that. You Black Prince.
Yes.
So,
Mr. Garvey left the Black Prince for us, so we're using them, and that's what we're using right now to build.
Yeah.
Some people are asking for the exoneration of Marcus Garvey from the U.S. government.
We're gonna hold on 1 minute, right back, and we're gonna finish that off.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, sure. Quick break.
Yes. You want me to go ahead, brother?
Yeah, we'll continue on.
Yes. Thank you. As I said, people have been asking the U.S. government for exoneration or pardon, however they want to put it. But I say to my brothers and sisters, if you're listening, my view is when an unjust system commits an unjust crime against you, you cannot go to their unjust courts to ask for a just decision. If we want Mr. Garvey to be exonerated or pardoned, we African people, as a group, as individuals, should pardon and exonerate Mr. Garvey ourselves.
Guys.
And how you can do that is to ensure that Mr. Garvey lives forever. And how you ensure that is to make sure his teachings continue. If you want to exonerate him, join his movement. If you want to exonerate him, do something for another Black person. That's not your blood. If you want to exonerate him, let's join the UNIA and continue to make the movement he organized as relevant today as it was 100 years ago. If you want to exonerate him, let's free our mind, organize for our people, and be able to defend our people, African people, wherever they are. If we want to exonerate Mr. Garvey, that's the best way to do it. Brothers and sisters, I'm the 10th successor to the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. However, his shoes are too large for my feet to fit in them. Therefore, I need you to help me by putting your feet as well in those shoes so we can somehow fit those boots of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and continue to do the work for our people that is dearly needed for our people. If you want to work with us, reach out to us, brothers and sisters. 718-570-7350. Mr. Garvey said it best. He said, all Black people are members of the UNIA. There are just two types of members. One who is active and another who is inactive. If you're not active, just activate your membership in the UNIA today. And all you have to do is pay your membership dues, become active, attend meetings, and plan for our people. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, so there we have it. The great works, the message, the Black print, to continue going forward. There's no reinventing the wheel because the Black print is already done.
Yes, brother.
But now the awakening of our action within our own selves need to happen, by joining or becoming a member, being active, because it's only a God cause, a righteous cause. You should never want to say, and that you would travel as Marcus Garvey did throughout the world and see the conditions of black people everywhere he went to be at the bottom. You know, that would be disturbing to a person of black race to say, well, why is it?
Yes.
It can't be accident. You know, it's not an accident if the United States government wants to suppress such a movement of uplifting their own citizens. So I don't see why, like you said, to ask them for exoneration, you are asking the same system that imprisoned him to exonerate him. They would have to admit to guilt by exonerating him. You know? So it's not needed to ask the government for exoneration of Marcus Garvey. He's already exonerated.
Of course, brother.
By the Almighty God.
Yes,
for his
brother.
work and his righteousness and his spirit, he's exonerated. And he said it in his letter when he said about death. That was his exiting of it. Yeah. But he let you know, like you said, he was spiritual because he said he would return in the whirlwind.
Yes, brother.
So he was talking from a level of a high spiritual level where people might not have been picking up.
Yes, of course.
You know, like his death, he's like, his death is not, his death is his physical death. But it only puts him in a position where he will be back with the rest.
Of course.
And, like Dr. King said, when he said he went to the mountaintop, then he came back, he's like, I have no fear of death. Because he's like, what I was revealed to me, I'm ready to go. You know, but it's good to see. I didn't know he had acknowledged Marcus Garvey too, and good Malcolm X had acknowledged him, and others. Minister Louis Farrakhan has said, you know, when he wanted to, when he lived in Jamaica, he saw the picture of Marcus Garvey on the wall of his uncle's house.
Yes. He
pointed to the picture and he told his uncle, he asked, who is that man? And he explained to Minister Farrakhan, and he says, I want to be a follower of that man. I want to meet that man. And his uncle told him, unfortunately, your Marcus Garvey has transformed to higher life. And he said tears came out his eyes because he said, you know, within his soul, he felt that's who he wanted to be a part of.
Of course.
But it was a different generation at time that already passed him. So there's many that recognize his works and his movement.
And brother, just to let you know, Malcolm X was actually born in the UNIA.
Okay.
Malcolm X's mother and father met at a UNIA function in Canada. That's how they met. And then they started a relationship, but they got married. And Malcolm X's mom and dad, they were leading a UNIA division here in the United States.
Okay.
So Malcolm X, prior to going in the Nation of Islam, it was all UNIA. He had learned the teachings of the UNIA from his mom and his dad in the meetings.
Yes.
And even after he left the nation, he was tutored by Carlos Cooks. So Malcolm X was a UNIA baby.
Yes.
Yes, brother.
Well, it's all the same. I mean,
yes.
Whether you want to be here or there, the movement is universal.
That's it.
You know, if you want to go under this banner, it still encompasses you because it's the big universal banner.
Of course, brother.
And some may not want to give the credit to it, but they all splintered out of the universal banner.
Yes.
You know, he's like the father, you know, of this movement. And many groups today that exist came out of this movement of Universal Negro Improvement Association. But I'm glad we're here to talk about it. It would be unjust for me, myself, to live my life and never publicly or privately to people I know to even mention or to raise up the movement of Marcus Garvey and to always put him in a high status, because he was a man that sacrificed his life for just to see the betterment of suffering people.
Yes, brother.
And,
well said.
And, it teaches us something about what he said in his letter from prison about fear,
Yeah.
And we should not fear that which we know is just.
Yes.
The consequences of fear of what we know is just, we should not fear it, because that means that we would lack belief.
Yeah, of course.
God and the higher power, so, and we know it exists. For those who want to be in disbelief, they could be, but like he talked about those whirlwinds, I don't have doubt, and when you fly over the Atlantic, all of the souls and suffering that went to the bottom of the Atlantic. They say now, even when airplanes are now going over certain parts of the Atlantic, they have to now change the route going to Africa because it's so much turbulence when it goes over. I said, that's the ancestors. They can't go over certain parts of the Atlantic anymore and go to Africa. They had to change the route. Why is that? They say when the turbulence gets so high, they're afraid the planes will go down.
Wow.
So that's not a coincidence, something speaking out. Yes, and that's the blood and suffering from the ground of the Atlantic, from the floor.
Power of our ancestors. Yes. And that's what Mr. Garvey was able to do, to harness the help of 12 million Black people. Yeah. He was able to reach the minds of people on a different level that most of us don't even understand, my dear brother.
Yes. And it's amazing when I look and hear about it. I just say, here's a boy when he was young who had this thought at a young age, coming out of probably poverty himself and with nothing, and had the conviction and courage within himself to get up and go do something. And not just do something so great. Yeah. From a thought. So he's to be commended greatly and highly for that, as his name lives on. We just got to continue to do the good and the work, follow that Black print, and get that book, Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. I'm going to go back and read it again now, another round of going through it. I'm going to go cover to cover.
Very good, brother. Very good.
It takes, I would do like Marcus Garvey said, even if you take a page a day, or even if you're waiting at a bus stop for a bus for an hour, that's the hour time you have that you don't have to waste.
True, of course.
So we don't need to waste time if we're on the plane. Instead of sleeping, we could take 2 hours and read.
Of course.
So we could find the time. Just use the wasted time for better time, for productive time.
We must.
So with that, Brother Duncan, we thank you for taking your time. I know you're just coming from Chicago off the plane from doing the work and continuation of the spirit of our great father, Marcus Garvey. And we just ask that the Almighty encompass you with his armor of protection and guidance at all times for the work you do. We support you. We with you 100%. Not no W.E. Du Bois style, straight. We don't go those ways. This movement is a righteous, straight movement, and we support it. I've always had from young, and for what I learned and know, and more people need to be educated now, especially the young now. If you ask maybe even at the grade school or middle school young man or woman now about Marcus Garvey, they probably will tell you, who is that? They would ask you, who is that?
Right.
And even their parents would say, who is he? So, a lot of us has been straight off our history and our leaders and our works purposely. But we can't rely on the education system because it still falls under that one structure that stopped the movement or tried to stop the movement in that same structure that imprisoned Marcus Garvey.
Yes,
so
of
we can't
course.
rely on no education departments to teach
We can't.
the upliftment of Black people. So that's why the UNIA had their programs, has their education, built their schools. Did Marcus Garvey build a hospital?
Yeah, they had a hospital. Even Harlem, there was a hospital, and they were building that university in Virginia that was gonna have a wing of a hospital as well. Because
Well,
remember,
there's a lot lies in the future.
yes.
But the show's time is up right now, Brother Duncan. We thank you for taking the time, and we just happy that you continuing the work and the great works. So may God bless you to continue even greater, and more people awaken to the growth and revitalize and uplift the words and black print of Marcus Garvey.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. One God, one aim,
and one destiny.
Long live Marcus Garvey.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.